Scientist G from Ministry of Earth Sciences to the dais. This is a very, very interesting session where we all would learn how each sector has used data for their decision-making process. I hand over this interesting session to you, sir.
Good morning to all of you. I'd like to now invite the other speakers onto the dais. Sri Suresh Chandra, Joint Secretary Legal Affairs, to please come on the stage.
Thank you, sir.
And Dr. Vishnukant Srivastava, Chief Director, Health and Family Welfare, to please come onto the dais. Shri Ranjan Mukherjee, Director, Ministry of Road and Transport, Highways, please come onto the desk. Please take your seats. Now I can call upon Abhishek Singh, Food Corporation of India, to come onto the dais and take the seat. Shri Hari Srivastava, Director Budget, may you please come onto the dais and take the seat. Now I call upon Vipul Kaushik, Director Advisory Services and LLP, Database Intelligence, to come onto the dais and take their seat. So good morning to all of you once again. First of all, let me thank NIC for giving me this opportunity to participate in this interesting session, which is important, particularly from the perspective of data-driven decision making. And we have 7 excellent speakers. They're expert in their own domain. And they are going to share their experiences and views, and they're also going to talk about their challenges and benefits associated with the sharing of the data and the way forward. So I would, if you just look at the definition of the data-driven decision making, basically it's a kind of a collation of data and analyzing it, and also making it available at the right time for the economic benefit. So it will be to take a decision and which will indirectly give the benefit to the society. For any kind of, I believe for any kind of decision supporting system, we need to have a systematic, scientific, time series data to generate a meaningful decision making system. And however, it's important to ensure to make it available, the data at the right time in a usable format. That's very much important. Secondly, we need to convert the raw data into some kind of a data product or information to make it use the data product. That is very much essential when we are providing the information. You have to convert into a data product or an information. Regarding open access data system, we all know that it improves the public services, ensures transparency, and foster innovation and entrepreneurship towards the socio-economic development. That is the objective of this goal, and which in turn promotes the inclusiveness and also empowers the citizenship. That's the objective of the whole open ocean data governance. I'm very happy to know this morning it was talked about it in the last 2 years that the initiative of Government of India on OGD as generated about 20,000 databases, released about 20,000 databases useful for the society. We also need to talk about what are the various challenges associated with it. It could be digitization. See, some of our institutions are more than 100-year-old. Like you have a Survey of India, you have NHO, or GSI, they are almost 100 years data. Most of the data is not in digital form. So that is one of the major challenges to convert the analog data into digital form. And also the interoperability of various data sets. And you also need to work on the standardization, standardization and quality assurance of the quality of the data. These are the challenges that are being to be addressed in our sessions. I take this opportunity to share some of the services that are being rendered by the Ministry of Earth Sciences, where we use a lot of data and generate data products used for the society. Basically, Ministry of Earth Sciences is a scientific ministry mandated to provide services to various sectors. There are about 12 different sectors, both in government and private, are the stakeholders of our services, like agriculture, aviation, shipping, road transport, energy, all this coastal navy, coast guard, defense. They all are involved in receiving our data. If you look at the overall vision of the ministry, overarching vision is to enable or excel as a knowledge and internet technology enterprise in the Earth system for the socio-economic benefit of India. That is our vision. And to address the vision, we have three major missions. One of the mission is to provide the best possible services, weather, monsoon, climate, disaster, ocean information services. Second thing is explore the oceans and including the polar region. We have observational network from pole to pole, and we have systems which are sending the information, collecting the information online, receive the data sitting in Delhi. And we have also, one of our mandate is to develop technology for harnessing the ocean resources. I'd just like to share a couple of things where our information services are being used by the common man. Today we give forecast to fishermen every day on their mobile in the local language. So they receive the information and go for fishing. And we give the information where to fish, what time you need to fish, what kind of local conditions are there. All the information, they receive it in their local language. They take the information and go for fishing. That is found to be very beneficial to that. Secondly, for the farmers, we provide agro-advisory services, something called weather outlook for 5 days. In the next 5 days, location specific. You have to give a location specific weather forecast. What would be the temperature, rainfall, humidity, wind at a particular time for the next 5 days. This kind of information, about 11.5 lakh farmers are receiving this information on mobile in their local language. So there was some kind of economic survey conducted by the NCAR recently, and they found these the benefits received by this comes to about enormous amount to contribute to GDP, about 35,000 crores to the GDP. So that is an indirect benefit you get it. There was a lot of discussion in the morning that selling the government data, can we make some money? More importantly, what is the benefit they derived from the data products that is being rendered by the ministry? This is one example that. But if you see, how do you achieve this target? So we need to have, it is being accomplished through a set of projects in the ministry.
Excuse me. Will you kindly invite Mr. Pradeep Chaturvedi?
Sure.
He is also one of the speakers.
Oh, sorry. Now I call upon Dr. Pradeep Chaturvedi to come onto the desk. Please come and take. Lastly, I would like to share one thing. How do you achieve all these targets in a right time at a right point? You need to have good set of data from the satellite and into data, and have good set of global models, and good set of computing systems. All these things are required to generate these products. On an average, we receive about 30 terabytes of data every year from different sectors of ocean, atmosphere, and the land. And some of our centers are recognized internationally, like the oceanographic data located in Hyderabad is recognized by the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO as a regional data center for the Indian Ocean region. Similarly, the data center located in Pune for meteorology has been recognized by World Meteorological Organization. So, these are some of the works what we are doing, and we are also in the process of developing blue economy concept paper to utilize the ocean resources, for which you need extensive data from the seas around India. With this brief introduction, now I will call upon Shri Suresh Chandra, Joint Secretary Legal Affairs, to make a presentation on that.
Thank you. Williams. Good morning, respected Chairman Dr. Sam Sundarji, Dr. Vishnukant Srivastava, Shri Ranjan Mukherjee Sahab, Shri Pradeep Chaturvedi, Director IT, Rajya Sabha Secretariat, Shri Abhishek Singh, Executive Director, Food Corporation of India, Shri N.M. Jha, Director, Budget, Shri Vipul Kaushik ji, Director, all the dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen. It is my proud privilege to be part of the discussion on the data-driven decision-making workshop organized by the DITI. I am one of the important committee members of the IFEG committee, which works on the interoperability framework for the IT services. And now we have been given the task of developing some open government, open data license policy. But one thing I would, before I give my presentation, the presentation is very pertinent maybe to all of you. Few of the thoughts I want to share. The first thing, our Additional Secretary and DG NIC has said that the Chief Data Officer, now the Data Controller, should be given the name of the data managers. Respected Madam Ji, Neeta Verma Ji, especially I want to tell you, in the government of India, you know, everything, every terminology, whatever is to be used, that is, you know, given thought. And that should fit in the legal framework somewhat, which the law ministry normally gives the final touching to the legal. See, the designations which are in the government are different the designations which are given in the private sector or in some of the autonomous bodies. The officers, secretaries, under-secretaries are like that. You know, when these designations are decided in the government, everybody understands. So perhaps this is one of the thought which I am just making a submission, that the difference between the private and the government should remain. Second thing, this is for the authorities to take a call. Second thing, in the government, see, we work, though it is a largest democracy, we work in a system which is representative democracy. Here the representative democracy means the sovereignty lies amongst the people. And the law which is made by parliament, which are the representative of the people, the sovereign power, all government employees, including us, are bound by the directions given by the parliament. That's why first we try to develop a legal framework and then assign certain duties and functions to the various authorities. This is, and there are three premises for this working in this, just for reminding, because those who are in the government, they know, they understand better. But there are certain participants which are from the organizations which are not purely government, like industrial organizations or certain service IT companies and all that. Especially, I requested Madam to invite some of the representatives of the FICCI and SOCHM and these people, so that they can, their voice can also be taken into consideration while we frame that policy. For them, just to bridge the communication gap, I want to just inform this August gathering that the government works on three premises, the legal premises. The first premises is the backward-looking conception of legitimacy. That is what I am saying. All government employees, every authority has to look backward, what is my authority to do so. And second is, there is always a balance between the administrative discretion and the fixed rules. And third one is the detection of error or irregularity which has crept into in the decision making and correction thereof. Without going into the details, other details, I will just, I am highlighting these issues because when we say decision making, so we decide, we take decisions in this atmosphere, in this legal framework. And the better decision will be when you have all the data. So data-driven decision making is one of the optimum and the accurate decision making. If you are doing something, that then it will be the decision without certain facts, and that will not be the perfect decision making. So the apt heading or the topic of the workshop is very good and apt. We must understand that we all the people have certain responsibilities, and those responsibilities and accountability with the transparency will come only when you understand your position within the environment, the government environment. I am making a presentation on the legal information management and briefing system. This is one of the APIs which we have developed, the Ministry of Law, in consultation with one of the very important technocrat, Mr. Ajay Gupta from the Railways and the NIC. And this is one of the application which is useful to all the government employees. This is that all data relating to court cases will be available on the one application which is open to all those who are registered on this. Very simple way of registering. Why we should have this application is one of the reasons that in the whole government of India, there are lot of cases. This is the figure which speaks about the enormity of litigation. In our country, there are over 3.2 crore cases pending in various courts. And in 80% of the cases, a state is a party. But at the same time, we don't know how many cases are pending as on date. So this application will address that problem. The LIMS is a web-based application designed and developed with a view to address government litigation. It is easy to access, web-based tool for comprehensive and proactive monitoring of court cases. It is 24/7 available, data at one place. It can be accessed from anywhere at any time. Even this application is available on your iPhone mobiles. If somebody wants to upload, somebody wants to see how many contents or how many cases are pending in our ministry or department or with me. It is a paperless work, environment friendly. Detailed information about the cases not required as in other software. One of the best way of monitoring the court cases. Reduces dependency on the subordinate staff. Now this is some ministry-wise report which we can skip, but this is something which we in the Ministry of Law we take care and we decide. This we can skip, but just you can have an overview. We have all the data, who are the chief nodal officers dealing with the court cases and who are dealing with this. These are all things. Now coming to the how to register on this LIMS is a very easy. Once you go on this, then you can click on the register in LIMS application. Then you can, these are some of the steps which are to be followed. And then you can update the status and all that. I will not go much in details in this. But this is the actual site of the LIMS. Here, if somebody wants, there is one new user. If somebody clicks on the new user and thereafter fills in all the details, he will get immediately the username as well as the password. Once the password is communicated, then he has to go to the nodal officer who will activate his account, and then he will have an access of uploading the cases, monitoring the cases, and doing what all those details. So these are few of the steps which a new user can follow and become the new user. All these are some of the things which you can see. Now this is the actual site. Once somebody opens it, then this kind of page will come. Here you can see the message board. If you want to send messages to the nodal officers or to the advocates or to any category of persons, in one go you can send to 100 people or 1,000 persons. Then e-Vault documents. This is the facility wherein you can upload some of your documents. Even if you can upload the judgment of the Supreme Court, which is a precedent and authority, you can also upload some of the articles, you can also upload some of the OMs, etc., circulars of the department. Then my court cases, then court cases. The court cases are as a whole court cases. My court cases means if I am one of the user, my own cases will come in that. Then feedback, if you want, if you need any feedback, you can write. We have one LIMS team which is working always, and they will give you, provide you if you have any difficulty in operating through this. Thereafter, member directory. See, in this, other details, the details will be court in which the case is pending and the case number. And there are certain other details also, like ministries, department, petitioners. As we are preparing some, returns in the tabulated form, all those features are given in this. And sir, there are only two things which cannot be edited in this. Number one is the court name, and number two is the case number. Other things are editable. Suppose nodal officer is changed, suppose your advocate is changed, then you can go in this last column here, in the right side, wherein you can upload the progress, you can update the status, you can edit the information except these two information which I have mentioned. You can upload what is the next date of hearing, last date of hearing. And there is another column here in this. There will be, see, the exception. Suppose if there is some wrong entry or something, it will be reflected in the exception of cases. These are some of the how to make entries, all these details are here. And thereafter, how to add progress, how to report, and how to edit, all these stages have been given. I'll not go into those details. These are all the features. And our team is working during office hours. You can have any query on telephone or something. So apart from that, when we interacted with some of the ministries, departments, we came across there is some wrong entry made in our this. The case doesn't belong to me, it belongs to somebody else. So there is a feature that we can transfer the cases. And unless that case is accepted by the person to whom you are transferring, that will remain figuring as the parliamentary question remains with you. So once the person accepts, then it will be transferred. Thereafter, another feature which we have developed, suppose there is one joint secretary who wants to monitor only few cases, important cases in the Supreme Court or somewhere, then he can click on my preferred cases. All the updating and everything will be seen by clicking only my preferred cases. We have added this, then helpline, help file. We have also added some department, then sub-departments. These are new features. Now these are details how to transfer and how to select, all these details are there. These are all internal things. Again, we are going to add few more things. Advocate payment module we are going to add. And the arbitration cases, which are not part of the litigation, but these are also very important, having, very huge stakes involved. And the mobile apps. Even through mobile, you can update the latest position of the case. These are some of the problems which you may not be directly related, but when it comes, we will try to sort out those things. Now, this is all from my side. Here I will just, because how it will add into the decision making, because all the information, database, even pleadings means the petition and the counter can also be uploaded in this. So in this data driven decision making, this is one of the best application which is has been developed and now being further developed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suresh Chandraji, for making an excellent presentation. If there are one or two quick questions, we can have it. Otherwise, we'll go to next speaker. We have 6 presentations to make. We have 1.5 hours to go. If you feel that we can ask at the end, well, that would be better. Thank you. I would now request Dr. Vishnukant Srivastavaji to make a presentation on improved health-related services by the government-based program and evaluation.
Chairman, sir, delegates on the dais, respected and esteemed participants. Now this, our health ministry, this is the amount of resource data set that is there on the datagov.in. Out of this Department of Health and Family Welfare, 3,141 data sets, for which I am representing as a Chief Data Officer, whereas NIHFW and AIDS Control and Ayush, the other data controllers are there. In this open data sets, we are publishing certain reports, that data goes into it, and we are collecting some data on our management information system, that is health management information system, that also goes into this open data system. Now I want to share with you a very interesting event that has occurred 2 days ago. We were sitting in Ayush, and the Ayush secretary wanted to know what percentage of farmers have got the training as far as NSS 70th round is concerned. So we usually used to go to MOSPI website, go there and start NSS 70th round. The person concerned was not having the ID, so he, as a new user, he has to create the ID. He started creating the ID. This server has gone down and we could not get, but it was very urgently required. So what we did, we went to the Google search engine, wrote NSS 70th round, we got the report, and we searched farmers, that clicking that training, Control F, and then the document, we got it immediately. Within 5 minutes, the work was solved. So my point is that as a data controller or as a custodian of data, we may not like to share the data, but when we sit on the other side of the table, we feel its importance. So we were sitting on the other side. We wanted NSS 70th round, that report and that data on that particular day, on that particular urgency level, and that time we recognized that how much important is the open data set platform is. So that I shared with you that interesting thing that happened just 2 days ago. Now we come to this our topic. This we have got the department publications, Health and Family Welfare Statistics in India, then Rural Health Statistics in India. Rural Health Statistics in India gives the personal, how much personals are employed, deployed, etc. Then survey data, National Family Health Survey data, district level household survey data, annual health survey data is there. And this is the total HMIS which I told you that we are. Now these are the certain data sets that are disseminated by RGIFS that we use. Estimated number of pregnant women, live births, number of infant for immunization activities. District wise need to know the pregnant women, live births, infant for immunization activity, and number of infant deaths, under 5 deaths. These are the things we used as a Millennium Development Goals. Now this is Millennium Development Goals, and now we are moving to Sustainable Development Goals. From Millennium Development Goals to we are moving to SDG, which will monitor from 2017 to 2030. This is totally a data-driven decision making. They have to use the data and then they will set the targets that these are the mortality rate, these are the things, and that they set and they monitor where we are moving. The annual health survey, this is also conducted at the behest of National Commission on Population and Planning Commission. It was conceived that time, and it gives the healthcare indicators district level and map its changes on a continual basis to assess the efficacy of various health intervention under National Health Mission. National Health Mission is a very big program of Ministry of Health, and so this annual health survey caters to the need of that. There also and this annual health survey covers these many states. Not all the states it covers only these many states. Some 8, 9 states. 9 states are there, 8 are this, and 9th is the Assam. So why they take this much only? Because 50% of country's population it covers, and 60% births it covers, 71% of infant deaths it covers, 72% of under 5 deaths it covers, 62% of maternal deaths it covers. So this is a large inter-district variation in these states. That's why we take this under annual health survey, and this data also goes to our open based data, this NIC. In annual health survey, we also have a clinical anthropometric biochemical data, CAB. It is here it is recorded height, length, weight, test for anemia, fasting blood glucose, blood pressure, salt testing, etc. This is all is a CAB report that also goes to our open data. Now the annual health survey actually this covers childhood disease, birth registration, breastfeeding, awareness in mothers, abortion, family planning practices, disability, morbidity, and personal habits, this and household characteristics. This those 8 states which are there in annual health survey, which I have just shown, they are called EAG state, Empowered Action Group states, and Assam. These are the coverage, and certain things are there. Now this is what way the field is organized, and this survey is done at 3 years time. This there are results also. Now the Ministry of Health is coming out with National Family and Health Survey, NFHS survey. Earlier also it was done, 92, 93, 98, 99, 2005 and 2006 it was done. It is at a state level, it was not at district level, but now we are moving towards the district level also, and the district level health surveys etc. are now being dispensed with, and we are moving to the new National Family Health Survey. This National Family Health Survey and DLHS district level health survey were conducted with a time of 4 and 7 years. In spite of having different sample size, different reference period, definition of some of indicators included in these surveys, people tried to compare these two surveys, DLHS and NFHS. So the ministry has taken a decision, let us stop DLHS, we move to NFHS. Now next NFHS will come and that will be done, and DLHS will not be in the picture. That is NFHS 4. And here there are two phases, 17 states are being covered in the first phase and second phase is 15 states. And these are all surveys are going to our open data sets of this DLHS, though till now this has gone to open data sets, but next time onwards it will not come. However, certain things about the DLHS are there. Then we have come, these are all surveys whose data has gone to our open data set. But now we have come to the portal, Health Management Information System. This is a portal, and lot of data on this portal is already in the public domain. Lot of data is there, but out of that data, some of the data is also going to open data set. Those which we feel they are service delivery type of data, and which we feel disease data and other data which are very important. Those data which actually measure the quality of data of our data, that doesn't go to open data set, because that is mainly for the purpose of improving the quality and making the intervention into the data. Because suppose some state has not uploaded the data quality will deteriorate. So those key indicators which gives the indication that data quality has deteriorated, we have to rush and we have to ask that state government, you please upload the data, or you have uploaded a wrong data, because of the validation check I found that your data has gone wrong. All those kinds of data which is on the quality of the main data, that is not going to open data. That is for our administrative purpose, that we are controlling and we are improving the data quality for that. This HMIS actually is not only to assist the management and planning of health program, but as opposed to delivery of care, designed to assist in the management and planning of health program. Here what in HMIS now we have stressed that the medical officer of the health unit should see the HMIS. The fundamental given in this HMIS is that the in charges, if they use the data, the quality of data will improve. So usability of data at the lowest level, at the facility, we call it a facility, any hospital is called as a facility. So there are several types of facility. There is a sub-center facility, that is there is a primary health center PHC, and there is a community health center CHC, and there are district hospital DH, and then there are medical colleges MC. So these are all called facilities, and their role is also overlapping type of roles. The deliveries sometimes take place in the medical colleges and hospitals, district hospitals, but the immunization takes place in the primary health centers, like that. So it is not this non-overlapping type of services are not there. So there are overlapping, lot of overlapping. So lot of concept are there in this health management information system, which is embodied there. And now in India, 1.94 lakh facilities across 672 districts of India are uploading the monthly data on these performance indicators. So such a big is this portal. 1.94 lakh facilities, they are uploading this data. They are active, means 1.94 are active, and the data are their data are not for all the diseases. The data are mainly for maternal health related, child health related, family planning related, health facility services related, laboratory testing related, and mortality related data. These are the areas in which this data flows to us. There,
Minutes to conclude.
okay. From this, so many reports are generated, but only these two reports are shared with this. Now, as far as data-driven decision making is concerned, I just want to show that these are indexes that is prepared. There are formula in this, and we can, with this index, we can categorize the whole India into whether performing good, bad, or other things, those on those parameters. And within state, district can be categorized, and the district as a whole can be categorized. Now that is the district as a whole India is being categorized, and this is district as inside the state is being categorized, how they are performing. So these are the things, data driven decisions we are taking like this. Thank you.
Thank Krishnaji. Now I request Sri Ranjan Mukherjee to deliver a talk.
Good afternoon to all, and Happy New Year also. This Chairman, Sri Somasundaramji, all senior officers on dais, all chief data officers of various ministries and departments, and other officers attending the workshop. At first, I actually want to thank NIC for holding such an important workshop, on such a relevant issue. This is a data-driven decision making, which is a very relevant issue nowadays, because all the ministries and departments are spending huge, it's incurring huge cost, for data and mobilizing the efforts of huge staff and lot of staff from states, from various agencies. The question is to how to best utilize the data and to use them for taking appropriate or corrective measures and implement them in a proper way so that the real benefit can be obtained from using all those data. And it is a question of benefiting the society. So use of data is very important. We are collecting huge data, but we are not utilizing them. That is the question. So that is the relevance of this workshop, I think. So as a director in the Transport Research Unit of the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, I am handling huge data. In fact, we are publishing various reports on road and road transport, including road accidents, traffic data, and road safety measures. So what I observed, in that, that we are mobilizing data from huge sources, at least from 250 agencies we are getting data. And we are compiling them, and we are putting them in the website and the portal, but users are less, So that is the main part. Lot of RTI questions I am receiving every day, 5 or 6, but they're asking the same questions, what we have already uploaded in our website, So that is the use of data and making their appropriate use. That is it's very important nowadays. So here as a case study, I will take this, road accident data. Though we have a lot of other data also, but road accident data, which is much relevant nowadays, because the available data tells us that, this area is actually, we have an alarming situation. So as per the latest data, that on an average, hourly, 56 accidents take place in our country, and we are losing 16 lives. And this out of these accidents, and we are every year about 1.40 lakhs people are dying. This accidents are killing this much of people, and out of that we are losing 53.8% of those people who belong to the group of 15 to 35 age group, the most productive age group. So that's why I have selected this topic, and I want to establish that this use of data can reduce accidents, and we can take better appropriate measures and can reduce accidents, and we can reach our goal of reducing accidents by 50% by the year 2020. So this is the thing, this is a nodal agency, the Transport Research Wing, and we are receiving data. Actually, we are collecting it from various agencies, but mainly we are receiving from states, UTs, the transport commissioners, the police heads, traffic of various states, and then this other agencies, So then the problem is that the road transport comes under list 2 of the 7th schedule of the Constitution, and especially it comes under domain of the state government. But we are getting all help from the state government, we are getting data from them. Then this next thing, this the availability of relevant data for the whole country essentially depends on the efforts mobilized by the states and UTs. So we depend largely on the state governments and other agencies. That is a very important point here. So these are the basic sources. We are receiving data from Director General, Inspector General of Police, especially those who are concerned with traffic side, Superintendent of Police of major states, State Transport Commissioners or State Transport Secretaries, then various state road transport undertakings, and other departments of states, ministries of various ministries. Then my focus will be on the that's basically on road accident data. As I have said that this data, available data, shows an alarming situation. So here the question is that how we collect the data. The data actually the state governments, they collect it, the local thana, the police, they collect the data and they give it to the district then in turn give it to the state, and from states we get it, but in terms of certain format. This format has been devised by United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific. Now this is an internationally accepted format. Now this format is very important. Now why this format is important? Because the way we get the data, we prepare the report, we publish it, that is okay. But other data can be derived at micro level, at the city level, or at the state level. And that part, is very important for taking appropriate decisions or policies. So for example, the causes of accidents. The causes of accidents differ from state to state. Now where we have to take policies, so that part, is very important. So that's why format is very important. But we have recently revised the format a little bit, taking into care the present changing scenario. So because the road environment, the road users' behavior, etc., have changed a lot over the years. So next one is that as I have said that the latest available data. So for road accident is concerned, it is for the calendar year 2014. And this publication contains data of all state, UTs, various aspects it covers, and then also the main city-wise. In the latest report, we have covered the data of 44 million plus cities. Then the next issue, what is very important, as I have said, that this first thing is the collection of data, then make best utilization of the data so that we can take appropriate decisions or corrective measures can be taken to ensure road safety. So road safety is now a very important issue. It is a matter of national concern, you know that, and international concern also. So it is a multidimensional issue, is a very challenging job. So the question is to get appropriate data. So
here is another concept that I think is being discussed upon is HALE, which is Health Adjusted Life Expectancy. And what's being thought about is that there could be different sets of data that a health department would actually like to monitor. So for example, the road transport, that could be one of the sources of data. There could be some PWD related information. There could be certain other health related scenarios which needs to be accessed. And using that, I think there could be a complete integrated picture as why the health in a particular state or a region is not really performing the way it should. Is it because of the roads that the condition is deteriorated? Is it because certain health initiatives are not taken care of? Is it because the medicines are not being provided timely? So a lot of things can be identified if we are able to integrate that data and analyze that information. I'll come to another concept of using scorecards with the data that currently is available to us. So we have been talking about the KPIs. I think what we can do is we can further structure this information to identify a focus area with typical weightages that I want to give. And then I can identify the score of that particular area with respect to different metrics. That is what I'm calling a scorecard. In this case, I'm talking about a district scorecard. I'll just give you a glimpse of in terms of how it works. So for example, if I'm talking about a district scorecard, it goes to a particular district. And in a particular district, I am then looking at different indicators with respect to agriculture, education, health, horticulture, etc. Let's say education. Within education, what I want to access is how I am doing with respect to access to education, quality of education, equity of education, and stuff like that. Further, when I click into it, what I can see is for access, there are different, just a minute, sorry.
Sir, you have 2 minutes time.
Is it?
2 minutes.
Oh. So what I'll do is, I'll just move ahead from here and I'll show you something which I tried to do using the data. When I think Neeta ma'am, told me about this opportunity, what I did was I actually took some data from our open data website and I tried to create certain useful dashboards which can actually provide us with a lot of insights. And believe me, this effort was not more than 4 to 5 hours. So what I'm trying to say is, if I am able to use that information and integrate that information in such a high speed, I think there's a lot of things that I can do using that. So what you see here is, it's a crime related information that was available on the website, where I'm seeing that, how the different types of crimes are actually performing in the country. Below, what you see here is there are different states. For example, if you see the trend with respect to Andaman and Nicobar Islands, what we see here is that the crime rate is actually declining, which is good. But if we look at Andhra Pradesh, I think that is not the case. Okay? Similarly, if we look at, there are certain crimes which are actually, there could be a very, very big impact because of those crimes, and cyber crime is one of those. And there is good amount of data which is actually available on the web. Now, if I look at cybercrime trend for a state, what I see is there is a drastic increase in cybercrime in the year 2013. And if I just go down and look at it, there are different motives due to which people are actually doing this cybercrime. For example, one of the major reasons is fraud and illegal gain. The second, the biggest reason is eve teasing and harassment. So if I look at one of the bigger ones and I see which states are leading into it, I see Uttar Pradesh is one of the states where a lot of cybercrime is happening just because of fraud. And who is doing that? I think this fraud is actually generally being conducted by neighbors most of the time. And if I then click on the next state, that is Andhra Pradesh, I see a different trend. Who is actually doing this crime over here are actually professionals. So now what it tells me is that this is the area in a particular state which I need to focus. And believe me, this is just 2 tables which are actually available on the Open Data website. And there are a lot of insights which I'm actually generating out of it. If I look at the other type of crime motives, what I see here is, for eve teasing, Maharashtra is the leader, and generally it is done by the neighbors. Second top is Andhra Pradesh, and Andhra Pradesh, again, you see that professionals are actually leading. Now the point is, definitely Andhra Pradesh and those professional groups have to be targeted to actually control the cybercrime. Okay, so I think what I'm trying to say is this is something which is very, very insightful if it is used properly. And lot of data is available on this. Similarly, I use the data from MSME industries, as in for a particular state, I actually restricted this analysis to a state and see how MSME industries are actually doing in a state. So there were different trends that actually emerged out. So what I'll show you is, I think I'll just take a minute of your time, because I feel this is very important, that using just simple data tables which are available on Open Data, Gov, I think a lot of things can be done. So what you see here is that there are different types of MSME units which have been installed in that particular state, and how these things are doing. If I look at the trend of it, I think it gives me a picture that employment trend by district, if you look at employment trend, I think it was not very good earlier, but after 2007, I think MSMEs are actually generating a lot of employment. And if you look at the trend below, number of MSMEs registered till 2007 were very high, while the investment that was done for the registration of these MSMEs was very less. So what is emerging out is that the investment was not really properly attributed in terms of the MSMEs that were created. And after 2007, I think the things are going on a right track. Now the same information, if I look at it in a different view, gives me a different information. It's the same data, but what I'm doing here is that for different types of industries, what I see is that the service industry, which is at the bottom of this graph, actually gives me more employment at less investment. So is that the area that I should be looking for? So what I'm trying to say here is that with this small data that we see on the website today, I think a lot of policy-related insights can be generated using proper visualization and structured data management methods. So I think data can also provide lot of tangible benefits. I will just take a case of the economic intelligence units, which are actually doing things at the state level. So for example, if we see a simple anomalies, so what you can really detect and automate some of these systems is if there are typical anomalies. For example, if you see there is 100% growth in a particular in a revenue, so it is generally not possible that in 1 month somebody can grow to the extent of 100%. Now, I'm just coming over here. So this is something about the dealer activity. This data is also available with every state government department. What we are saying is that there are dealers who are actually claiming input tax credit from the government by having transactions against cancelled dealers, against themselves, and so many things. So you can see that a simple analysis actually fetched a benefit of more than 400 crores. And it was only the internal data of one of the commercial tax departments. Just imagine what can happen if I am able to integrate this data with an external data, with some other department data. Here was an example where we actually tried to integrate with this data with steel and mining department. And the benefits were really huge to an extent of around 900 crores. If you just compare the industries registered with commercial tax versus labor database, you will find the difference. And you can see that there are huge number of dealers who are not registered, and you can go after them. So there are very, very simple techniques. If we use it in a very structured way, I think they can give us a lot of insights and a lot of tangible benefits. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Vipul. I would like to thank all the speakers for excellent, interesting and information presentations, which gives a lot of insights to think about it now. We are almost completely ran out of time for any questions, but I am sure that we can have 1 or 2 quick, if you otherwise we are in between lunch and now, so we have to break at 1:30. So we can have more discussion if during lunch time. Is that okay? Are you okay? Maybe one or two quick questions. You can identify yourself and then ask question to the presenter. Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir. I think perhaps the problem which you are raising is that to which division this case, which is now being fought in the court of law, relates. If you see any litigation occurs only when you pass an order which, according to the petitioner, is either illegal, unauthorized, or discriminatory. Now, the first thing is there must be an order, there must be a cause of action, and the cause of action must have arisen from some order. Whenever you see any of the petition which is filed, you will see blah blah, and the last one will be, the first one will be the grievance against which order, and the last one will be the relief that is which is being prayed. So if you can ascertain whose order it can be, definitely you can find which division or which department. Here I want to just tell you one thing. In the litigation, it is the first respondent is the Secretary to the Government of India, Secretary of a department. There is a philosophy or reason behind it, because the Secretary is the first civil servant, and all the officers working and maybe sometimes passing the orders are also working under him. So anything which is not being addressed in-house or at the level of representation or grievance made, then it is going to the court. So it is taken as a very serious thing, and one of the requirement is that the Union of India through the Secretary has to be the first respondent, even if there is one director or the Secretary or Commissioner Income Tax or whatever is made a party. So this is, I think, within the department you can find whose order it is. This is for the department, for the people. Thank you.
Neeta, madam. Okay.
No, I'll first of all like to compliment all the speakers. I know all of you are very busy in schedule, and it was personally also quite an enriching experience. Since now we have, introduced this topic in government as a whole, and we definitely have a mandate to take it. So I just wanted to have an opinion of each of the panelists. To your mind, what is the most important thing we need to do to really bring this culture of data-driven decision-making in the government? Just one thing, if each one of you can tell your mind, that really give us some more input. Thank you.
There is a question at the back. Maybe we need some time to answer, because each person has to answer. Means.
I think the data analytics is most important. So every department should do some data analytics from the budget aspect itself, if you take it, or from the various program performance activities, the data relating to that. What is every public activity, public service expenditure delivering? So the data is there, whole lot of data is there, undecipherable. You cannot make out everything. Whether the actions that you are taking what is the result of that on those data? It is not there. Some linkage has to be there. So data analytics is the next big thing that we should do if we have to make our decision making, if we have to make our governance better.
So I think the most important thing is to establish the reliability of data, make it more authentic. The more reliable the data will be, the users will take it more easily, and there will be more use of data. That is one thing. The other thing is that there should be a strict monitoring. There should be a system of monitoring at every level, from compilation level, then at the level of those who will take decisions on that basis, and at the implementation basis, and then this flow back to that. Thanks.
So I believe that timely availability of the data is very important to take a decision. Thank you.
Just to supplement my previous speakers, the important thing is who analyzes and who takes that decision. So throwing it open even to the stakeholders, those who are not working within the silos, I mean to the outside public, to the private persons, and then come out with the decision making, that will help. Thank you.
See, what I would say is that all of us produce a lot of data. Every department produces immense amount of data. So instead of like making all the data that we have in the raw form public, what we need to do is to do an ABC analysis, prioritize the data which is most relevant to our key operations or key functions, then relate the data to those functionalities that we perform, and then put it in a very simple, relevant format, so that people at all levels are able to use the data and use it for decision making. So I would say prioritization and identifying the relevant data with regard to our functionalities.
This why we don't try to give the data to the open platform. The reason is that it's a data quality. We are not sure what kind of data quality it is. The data which comes from the survey, okay, that data is finished, the committee has finished, everything is finished, no problem. But when the data comes on the portal, and when you want that the current data should be there, I have seen that suppose you see the last month data, the quality is very poor. The data which is current month data is very poor. But if you see the 1 year back data, quality is very good. So that coverage is there, quality is good. Because lot of validation checks have gone. So there this problem comes. So such kind of data, something is to be done, either third party audit or some kind of other measures is to be taken, so that if we can ensure the data quality, no problem. Or you can immune the chief data officer from some such, though he takes care of lot of things, data quality should be good and all those things, but if you cannot immune him from this responsibility, he may not like to share the data with the open system.
Being the odd man out, I am in a better position to give you the, taking a clue from our colleague from the budget division. He was talking about the hungry of data for the budget division. What we have realized is that what we faced 10 years back, when we asked for the answers, it was not sent in time. We made a portal and everybody was asked to upload those portal. Once they are making a data of budget division, they are giving a headwise allocation of budget and expenditure. Can't we make a portal for them? So that every ministry or department use the username, password, maintain the entire data of budget of that part. I am not linking with the open data. This is only for data management. What we need is an integration of our data and identifying of various data used by the ministries or the government, which can be linked together. Because what we see in the answers are coming in different formats and different data are there. Integration data is missing. So integration data by making a portal or by making something at a common platform, and so that everybody can upload the data on that part also.
Thank you, Shin. I think almost most of the things are covered, by the panels. But I think one thing is that all of us are using data, all of us are analyzing data. There could be different level of maturities. There are different problems that we are facing with respect to data and the facilities. I think we are definitely getting some benefits out of it, and this would be a big motivation factor if we are able to publish the benefits somewhere that we get from that data analysis. I think that could be very helpful.
And I'd like to add one more thing, ma'am. There are individual spots of brilliance in every ministry department, every place. And we always talk about scaling it up, spreading it across the country. We only talk about it. Can data management help us in doing that? Because data can throw us details on what are the individual items, things that is being done in one particular brilliant spot, which needs to be done. Then we keep monitoring against those performance data. That data can, I think, it can be a game changer.
I would like to add on this. You will remember that, I don't know, when you made the DDO software and the PAO software. The genesis of the PAO and DDO, now CGA is having control on everything. Earlier there was no control. Can't we have that kind of data management and integration in every field so that we can have a proper control over that particular area of data also?
Okay, I think that is the
Thank you.
last question.
Yeah. It's actually not a question. First of all, I would like to really express our appreciation to all the panelists for sharing those presentations. There is a request to NIC, please make these presentations available online so that people can know what's happening. Now, the other suggestion is this. Every ministry or department is working in at least two silos that I am familiar with. One is the RTI silo and the other is the open data silo. Now, if these two could be brought together so that that important suggestion which the Honorable Prime Minister made when he was inaugurating the annual convention of the RTI organized by CIC, that analyze RTI applications that come to you and then see what kinds of information people are asking again and again so that you can proactively disclose that information. That is a very important step that needs to be taken. And my last suggestion, the Department of Personnel and Training, which is the nodal department for implementing the Right to Information Act, has time and again requested all ministries and public authorities to send them stories of how they are making their work more transparent. And till date, the compendium that they are compiling are primarily stories from civil society, not containing stories of the kind that you told us today. In fact, these stories need to be written down because this is what will give the impression that the government is working. Why are you ashamed to even tom-tom your achievements? Please do that. Hire a PR agency or somebody, to put this in the public domain. Because the kind of information that you're really putting out, I have my serious doubts whether civil society and the media have the capacity to digest it and question it. So you're really several steps ahead of us. So you need to do a lot more of, publicizing of your efforts. Thank you.
An enlightening presentation. It was really very good. Thank you all our distinguished panelists. And we must give credit to the chairman for managing the time so very well, especially when the topic was so very